This insubordination will not stand. You are relieved of duty, effective immediately. What's your rank?
Joint Chiefs.
Colonel Knox stood at the head of the war room table, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Are you here to provide rank, or are you here to hide the paperwork? The question landed like a slap. 20 feet of tension-filled air separated him from the woman in the corner. Lyra Maddox didn't answer. She just stood there in her gray suit, clutching a notebook, wearing nothing that would make someone look twice. Knox took a step forward. His boots echoed on the polished floor. Around the table, 18 officers watched the same thing. A woman who shouldn't be here, being reminded of exactly that. But what Knox didn't know would cost him everything. If you've ever felt invisible in a room full of power, stay with me, because this quiet woman is about to change everything. The briefing started 11 minutes ago. Lyra walked in at minute 9. I'm waiting, Knox said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. 26 years in the Navy taught him how to command a room without shouting, how to make a question feel like an order, how to isolate someone in front of witnesses without ever touching them. Lyra lifted her chin half an inch. Her mouth opened, then closed. She glanced down at the notebook, then back up. The movement was so small, it could be mistaken for nothing at all. But it wasn't nothing. It was a decision not to escalate. It was a choice to absorb rather than deflect. Around the room, officers exchanged looks. One lieutenant near the door shifted his weight and stared at the floor. Knox waited 3 more seconds. Then he turned back to the table, waving a hand as if brushing away something inconsequential. Right, let's continue. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it filled the space anyway. Someone muttered something about admin overflow. Someone else chuckled. Lyra remained where she was, spine straight, hands steady on the notebook. Her eyes never left the map on the screen. The briefing started 11 minutes ago. Lyra walked in at minute 9. I'm waiting, Knox said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. 26 years in the Navy taught him how to command a room without shouting, how to make a question feel like an order, how to isolate someone in front of witnesses without ever touching them. Lyra lifted her chin half an inch. Her mouth opened, then closed. She glanced down at the notebook, then back up. The movement was so small, it could be mistaken for nothing at all. But it wasn't nothing. It was a decision not to escalate. It was a choice to absorb rather than deflect. Around the room, officers exchanged looks. One lieutenant near the door shifted his weight and stared at the floor. Knox waited 3 more seconds. Then he turned back to the table, waving a hand as if brushing away something inconsequential. Right, let's continue. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it filled the space anyway. Someone muttered something about admin overflow. Someone else chuckled. Lyra remained where she was, spine straight, hands steady on the notebook. Her eyes never left the map on the screen. The briefing continued. A major presented updated projections on biological weapons recovery efforts near Kadena Air Base. To canisters were unaccounted for. Civilian exposure risk was climbing. The Japanese government was demanding answers. Knox listened with his arms folded, jaw set, every inch of him projecting control. He interrupted twice to correct minor details. Both times, the officer deferred immediately. This was his room, his operation, his authority. Lyra didn't move from her corner, but her gaze tracked across the map in a way that suggested she wasn't just watching. She was cataloging. For grid coordinates, 3 transport routes, to choke points. Major Ben Harlow, seated 3 chairs down from Knox, glanced sideways at her. He was 52, gray at the temples. 28 years of intelligence work etched into the lines around his eyes. He didn't stare. He didn't make it obvious. But he noticed the way she held the classified folder. Grip firm. Thumb placed exactly where protocol dictates for secure document handling. Civilians don't hold files like that. Civilians don't know to. Harlow said nothing, but the thought didn't leave him. At the 18-minute mark, Knox slammed a hand onto the table. The sound cracked through the room like a rifle shot. We are not waiting for State Department approval to move assets into contested waters, he said. This is a military operation. We don't take orders from bureaucrats who've never set foot on a carrier deck. He turned toward the main display, dragging a finger across the touch interface. We pushed the timeline up. Extraction begins at 0400 tomorrow. No delays. No second guessing. He glanced over his shoulder. Anyone here unclear on that? Silence. Not the kind that suggests agreement. The kind that suggests no one wants to be the next person Knox decides to correct. Lyra shifted her weight. It was a tiny movement, barely perceptible. But Knox caught it. He turned, eyes narrowing. "Do you have a question, miss?" She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze moved from the map to Knox. For half a second, something flickered behind her expression. Not fear, not defiance. Calculation. "No, sir," she said quietly. Knox stared at her for 3 full seconds. Then he smiled. "It wasn't warm. Good, because I would hate to think we brought a psychological counselor into a tactical briefing just so she could offer feelings about operational timelines." The room erupted in scattered laughter. Not everyone joined in, but enough did. Lyra lowered her gaze again, but Major Harlow watched her a moment longer. She didn't flinch. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked patient. 7 minutes later, Knox stopped mid-sentence. He looked directly at Lyra again. "Actually," he said, "I need to ask, what exactly is your function here?" Lyra met his eyes. "Support. Support." Knox repeated the word like he was tasting something unpleasant. "Support for whom?" "The unit." "Which unit?" Lyra hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. But Knox saw it. He stepped away from the table, moving toward her with the kind of deliberate calm that precedes escalation. "I'm going to be very clear, miss, whoever you are. This is a war room. This is where we plan operations that determine whether sailors live or die. This is not a place for—" "I understand, sir." Knox stopped a feet away from her. His voice dropped. "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like someone at Pearl Harbor decided we needed a feelings consultant to make sure no one gets their emotions hurt during a bioweapon crisis." Lyra didn't reply. Knox leaned in slightly. "So let me make this simple. You can stay if you tell me your rank. Right now." The room went still. Every officer was watching. Harlow had his pen halfway to the paper, frozen. Lieutenant Cole Everett, near the door, stared at the back of Knox's head, jaw tight. No one spoke. Lyra looked at Knox, then she looked past him, at the map, at the threat zones glowing red across the Philippine Sea. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "I'm here to do my job, Colonel." Knox straightened. His smile vanished. "That's not an answer. It's the one I have." For a moment, it seemed like Knox might let it go. Then he stepped back, gesturing toward the door with one hand. "Out." Lyra didn't move. "I said out." Knox's voice hardened. "I'm not going to repeat myself. You don't have clearance to be in this room. You don't have rank. You don't have a reason to be here. So you're going to leave right now, before I have security remove you." Lyra's fingers tightened on the notebook. Her breath was even. Her posture didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. A flicker of something older. Something that had seen rooms like this before and made different choices. She didn't look away from Knox. She didn't apologize. She simply said, "I still have work to do here." The room exploded. Not with sound, with tension. Knox stared at Lyra like she'd just violated every protocol he'd ever enforced. Then he moved fast. He closed the distance between them into strides, reached out, and gripped her shoulder hard. "I don't repeat orders to civilians." He pushed, not gently. Lyra stumbled backward. Her hip caught the edge of the auxiliary table. The notebook fell. She tried to catch herself, but her balance was already gone. Her head struck the corner of the metal table with a dull, sickening crack. She went down. For one long second, no one moved. Then Lyra pushed herself up onto her hands. Blood ran down the side of her face from a cut just above her temple. The war room was silent. Not tense, not expectant, just silent. Harlow half froze from his chair, then stopped. Everett stared, mouth open. Knox stood over Lyra, breathing hard, his hands still raised. He didn't look sorry. He looked like a man who just enforced order. Lyra touched her temple. Her fingers came away red. She stared at them for a moment, then wiped her hand on the edge of her jacket. Slowly, carefully, she got to her feet. She didn't waver. She didn't cry out. She picked up the notebook from the floor, straightened her jacket, and stood exactly where she was before. Blood dripped onto her collar. She didn't wipe it away. "I still have work to do here," she said again. Knox's jaw tightened. "What did you just say?" Lyra didn't answer. She looked past him at the screens, at the op plan, at the assets arranged across the Pacific like pieces on a chessboard. Her expression was unreadable. She stood there bleeding, and no one helped. If you've ever felt invisible in a room full of power, drop a comment, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about authority. The next day, at 1600 hours, Knox was in a meeting with his senior staff. 6 officers sat around a table covered in printed maps and status reports. Knox stood at the head, arms crossed. The door opened. Lyra stepped in. Every head in the room turned. Knox's expression hardened immediately. "This is a closed meeting." Lyra didn't reply. She walked to the table, set down a single sheet of paper in front of Knox, then stepped back. Knox picked it up, scanned it. His jaw tightened. "What is this?" "A request for operational review." "A request from whom?" "Me." Knox crumpled the paper in one hand. "I don't know who you think you are, but you don't get to walk into my meetings and make requests. You don't have the authority. You don't have the rank, and you sure as hell don't have my patience anymore." Lyra met his gaze. "The request is filed. You can ignore it if you choose. You're damn right I will." Knox tossed the crumpled paper into a trash bin beside the table. "Now get out." Lyra turned and left without another word. That evening, at 04:15 the next morning, the second briefing began. Knox was already in the war room. Same officers, same screens. When Lyra walked in, Knox didn't even look at her. He just kept talking. But this time Harlow watched her from the moment she entered. So did Everett. Lyra took the same position in the corner. Same gray suit, same notebook. The cut on her temple was now a dark bruise, visible even from across the room. No one mentioned it. No one asked if she was okay. Knox continued the briefing as if she didn't exist. 15 minutes in, an alarm screamed through the base. Red lights flooded the war room. Every screen flashed to a new display. A tactical alert. Priority 1. On the main display, a single message appeared in bold red letters. Unauthorized strike authorization detected. Drone asset Alpha 7 has entered auto engagement mode. Target USS Ronald Reagan. The room erupted. Officers shouted over each other. Knox stared at the screen, his face draining of color. The drone, one of the Navy's most advanced autonomous strike platforms, was now locked onto the carrier group in the Philippine Sea, and it was counting down to launch. An intelligence officer stammered, "Sir, only Joint Chiefs level authorization can activate a drone in auto strike mode." "How is this?" Knox spun toward Lyra. His voice cracked. "Did you do this?" Lyra looked at the screen, then at Knox. Her tears had stopped. Her expression was no longer one of pain. It was something else now, something harder. "No," she said quietly, "but this is what I warned you about." Knox's hands shook. "What are you talking about?" Lyra stepped away from the wall, moving toward the center console. No one stopped her. "Someone inside your command structure has been planning this. Someone with access. Someone who knew how to hide it. And someone who knew that if you kept me out of this room, no one would catch it in time." Knox stared at her. The room was chaos. The countdown on the screen read. An officer shouted, "We need to override the authorization now." Another officer responded, "We can't. The system is locked. Only Joint Chiefs can override it." Knox turned back to Lyra. His voice was raw. "If you have Joint Chiefs access, then stop it." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped up to the console. Her hands moved across the interface, entering commands faster than anyone in the room could follow. The countdown didn't stop. "Why isn't it working?" Knox demanded. "Because," Lyra said quietly, "whoever did this knew the protocols. They built in a fail-safe. The system won't respond to a standard override." "Then what will it respond to?" Lyra didn't answer. She kept working. The room held its breath. Knox stepped closer. His voice was barely above a whisper. "If you can stop this, stop it, please." Lyra's fingers paused over the screen. She looked at him. "Before I do, I need you to understand something." "What?" "You asked me for my rank." Lyra's voice was steady now, calm. The chaos around her faded into background noise. "You asked me who I was, and I told you I had work to do here. You didn't believe me. You humiliated me. You tried to erase me. And you almost succeeded." Knox said nothing. Lyra turned back to the screen. "But you were wrong about one thing." "What's that?" Lyra entered one final command. The countdown stopped. The screen flashed. The alert turned yellow, then green. The drone disengaged. The room exhaled. Officers collapsed into chairs. Someone muttered a prayer of thanks. Knox stared at the screen, then at Lyra. His voice shook. "How did you?" Lyra picked up her notebook. She looked at Knox one last time, and then she said the words that would change everything. "Because I'm Joint Chiefs." The room froze. Every officer stopped moving. Knox's face went white. Lyra continued, her voice cutting through the stunned silence like a blade. "I'm Civilian Commissioner, 7 of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. My authority supersedes every person in this room, including you, Colonel." Knox's knees buckled. He caught himself against the edge of the console, staring at her in disbelief. Harlow stood slowly, eyes wide. Everett took a step forward, then stopped, unsure what to do. Lyra reached into her jacket, pulled out a badge, a different one from before. This one had a seal on it, 7 stars arranged in a circle. She set it on the console. An officer near the back whispered, 7 stars. That's the ethics oversight seat." Knox opened his mouth. No sound came out. Lyra didn't wait for him to recover. She turned to the MPs who'd been about to escort her out earlier. "You're dismissed." They left immediately. She looked at Harlow. "Major, I need you to run a full audit of terminal access logs for the past 72 hours. Someone in this room activated that drone. Find them." Harlow nodded, moving to a secondary console without hesitation. Lyra looked at Everett. "Lieutenant, seal the war room. No one leaves until we identify the breach." Everett moved to the door, locking it down. Lyra finally turned back to Knox. He was still standing there, staring at her, his entire world unraveling in real time. She stepped closer. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "You asked me why I let you treat me the way you did. You asked me why I didn't fight back." Knox couldn't speak. Lyra continued, "Because I needed you to. I needed you to underestimate me. I needed you to be so certain of your authority that you wouldn't notice what was happening right under your nose. And I needed the person who planted that malware to think they'd won." Knox's voice was a rasp. I didn't know." "No, you didn't." Lyra picked up the fabricated file Knox had created to destroy her reputation. She held it for a moment, then set it back down. "You tried to destroy me to protect your ego. But in doing so, you almost let a traitor start a war." Knox's legs gave out. He sank to his knees, literally on the floor of the war room. Officers around the room watched in stunned silence. Lyra didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She just looked at him with something that might be pity, or exhaustion, or both. Then she turned away and got to work. "Commissioner," Harlow said without looking up, "I've got something." Lyra leaned closer. On the screen, a series of login attempts, all from Terminal 7, all outside normal duty hours. 02:30 yesterday, 03:15 the day before, and tonight at 0-3-40-5, just 20 minutes before the drone activation. Harlow highlighted the user ID. This terminal was assigned to Captain Raymond Voss, Intelligence Liaison. He's been accessing classified strike protocols for 72 hours. Lyra's expression didn't change. "Where is he now?" Harlow checked the personnel roster. According to the system, he logged out at 0400 and left the building. "He's still here." Harlow looked up at her. "How do you know?" "Because he's waiting to see if it worked." Lyra turned toward Everett. "Lieutenant, pull the security footage for all exits in the last 30 minutes. Everett moved to another console. His eyes scanned multiple camera feeds simultaneously. Then he stopped. "Commissioner, I've got him. He's in the logistics annex. East Wing, 2nd floor." Lyra nodded. "Major Harlow, you're with me." They moved quickly through the corridors. Lyra in front, Harlow and Knox following. The East Wing logistics annex was dim, lit only by emergency strips along the floor. They reached the 2nd floor. A single light spilled from an office at the end of the hallway. Lyra approached alone. Through the half-open door, she could see Captain Voss sitting at a desk, staring at a laptop screen. He looked calm, too calm. Lyra pushed the door open fully. Voss looked up, His expression didn't register surprise, just resignation. Commissioner Maddox. Captain Voss closed the laptop slowly. I assume you stopped it. Yes. He nodded, almost to himself. I thought you might. Harlow moved to flank the doorway, weapon drawn. Knox stood behind him. Lyra stepped into the room. Who are you working for? Does it matter? Yes. Voss stared at her for a long moment. Then he shrugged. Private contractors, defense companies, who stand to profit if tensions escalate in the Pacific. They pay better than the Navy does, and they don't ask you to risk your life for people who don't appreciate it. So you were willing to start a war. I was willing to create an opportunity. Voss stood slowly, hands visible. You think I'm the only one? There are others. People who are tired of watching politicians handcuff military operations. People who understand that sometimes force is the only language that works. Lyra didn't respond. Voss took a step toward her. Harlow raised his weapon. Captain, don't move. Voss stopped. He looked at Lyra with something like curiosity. You let him humiliate you. You let Knox treat you like garbage for 2 days. Why? Lyra met his gaze. Because I needed you to think I was powerless. I needed you to believe you'd already won. People make mistakes when they feel safe. Voss smiled faintly. You're good. Better than I expected. You're under arrest. Voss nodded. I know. He held out his wrists. 2 hours later, Lyra stood in the war room with Admiral Daniels on a secure line. Admiral, this is Commissioner Maddox, civilian seat 7. We had an attempted unauthorized strike activation. The threat has been contained. 1 arrest made. Captain Raymond Voss, intelligence liaison. There was a pause. Then, understood. I'll have a team en route immediately. Commissioner, do you require additional support? No, sir. The situation is stable. And Colonel Knox? Lyra glanced at Knox, who stood near the back of the room, shoulders slumped. He'll be filing a full report. I recommend administrative review, but no charges. Noted. Thank you, Commissioner. The line disconnected. Lyra turned to face the room. Every officer was staring at her. She reached into her jacket, pulled out a challenge coin, and set it on the console. 7 stars encircled an eagle. Beneath it, engraved text, Civilian Commissioner, Joint Chiefs of Staff. Most people in the military will never meet one of us, Lyra said quietly. We operate in the background. We observe, we report, and when necessary, we intervene. Not because we want power, but because someone has to make sure the system works. Knox finally moved. He walked slowly toward Lyra, stopped a few feet away. His voice was barely audible. I need to know. The file I created. The accusations. Were any of them true? Lyra looked at him. No. Knox closed his eyes. I destroyed you. I tried to ruin your life. And it was all a lie. Yes. Why did you let me? Lyra picked up the coin, turned it over in her hand. Because if I'd stopped you, Voss would have gone underground. He was watching me. Watching how the command structure responded. If I'd pulled rank immediately, he would have aborted. We would never have caught him. Knox's voice cracked. So you let me hurt you. You let me humiliate you in front of everyone. You bled. You cried. Also I wouldn't suspect. Yes. Knox dropped to one knee. Not out of weakness. Out of respect, shame, gratitude. Commissioner, I don't have words for what I did. I don't have an excuse. You did what you believed was right. Lyra interrupted, her voice softer now. You were wrong, but you weren't malicious. You were scared of losing control, and someone used that fear against you. Knox looked up at her, tears in his eyes. How can you forgive me? Lyra crouched down so she was at eye level with him. I'm not here to forgive you, Colonel. I'm here to make sure this doesn't happen again. She paused. You're a good officer. You've saved lives. You've led men and women through impossible situations. But you let your pride blind you, and that almost cost us everything. Knox nodded slowly. What happens to me now? That depends on you. Lyra stood, offering him a hand. He took it. She pulled him to his feet. You can fight the review. You can try to justify what you did. Or you can own it, learn from it, and become the leader your people need. Knox wiped his face. I'll do whatever you ask. I'm not asking anything. I'm telling you what I already know. You're better than this. Weeks later, Knox stood in front of a new plaque mounted on the war room wall. In his hand was a commendation for his role in assisting Commissioner Maddox during the Voss incident. She recommended you for it, Major Harlow said. She wrote that your cooperation prevented potential casualties, that you demonstrated the ability to adapt under pressure and prioritize mission over ego. Knox closed the folder. Where is she now? She left 3 days ago. Another assignment. Knox looked back at the plaque. Then he smiled, not out of pride, out of gratitude and hope. Across the Pacific, Lyra sat in a secure office at a different base. 3 files spread before her. 3 names, 3 officers, 3 potential threats. Navy, Air Force, civilian contractor. Each marked with the same red flags Voss had. Unexplained communications, financial irregularities, ideology shifts. Her phone vibrated. She read the message, 3 more. Proceed as planned. She deleted it. Then she opened a new file and began making notes. The work was never done, but that was why she was here. That was why she took the oath. And that was why, no matter how many times people like Knox tried to break her, she would keep getting back up. Because justice isn't loud. It's patient. And she had nothing but time. She saved the base they tried to destroy her in. She wore their contempt like armor. Because strength isn't about making noise. It's about discipline when no one is watching, and justice when no one is clapping. If this story gave you chills, hit that subscribe button, because there are 3 more like Voss still out there, and Commissioner Maddox is coming for them. Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for watching. This is MVPB Story.